parents agreed to watch my kids during my work trip. They then took their own trip, abandoning my children alone. I canceled all my plans when a neighbor called. My kids were hospitalized. For years, I was the rock of my family, the one everyone leaned on but no one ever protected. Then one ordinary Thursday, a single text message with a cruel laughing emoji landed in my lap, and that fragile world didn't just crack. It exploded. My name is Misty McBride. I'm 34, a mom of 2 incredible kids, and I've spent most of my life being that person. You know, the one who cleans up messes, fixes problems, and always shows up. That Thursday, I was just staring at a progress bar on my computer screen, totally zoned out when my phone buzzed. It was from my dad. And the message? It hit me like a physical blow. Don't bother coming on Saturday. None of your relatives want you there. And then the absolute kicker, a laughing emoji at the end. Can you believe it? Someone actually chose to add that, to try and make pure, cold cruelty seem casual, almost earned. I just stared at that screen, probably for far too long. My first reaction wasn't anger, though. It was this thin, breathless laugh that escaped me before I could stop it. Not because it was funny, God no. It was because it confirmed something I'd been fighting to ignore for months. We weren't pretending to be a family anymore. There was nothing left to play along with. Not after what they'd done. See, 3 months before that text, I'd had a last-minute work assignment out of town. Nothing glamorous. Definitely not optional. I was hesitant about leaving my kids, but my parents insisted. "Oh, Misty, we never get enough time with our grandbabies," they cooed. "Let us help you for once." And you know what? I believed them. I wanted to believe them. Instead, they packed up their bags and drove 2 states away to a music festival. They left my 8-year-old daughter and 5-year-old son alone in their house. For 4 days. For terrifying days. There was no working thermostat in the dead of winter. A freezer full of frozen dinners my daughter couldn't even reach, and a pathetic note on the counter that just said, "Be good." My neighbor called me, her voice tight with panic, saying she'd seen my daughter sitting on the porch for hours, trying to keep her little brother warm. By the time I made it back home, my son was in the hospital with a raging fever. And my daughter? She just kept apologizing, like she'd done something wrong by being scared. I can still picture myself in that hospital room, the fluorescent lights humming, feeling like my chest had been hollowed out, like something vital had been ripped right out of me and tossed aside. When I finally confronted my parents, I didn't filter a single word. I called them selfish. I told them they didn't deserve to be called grandparents. I told them they had gambled with my children's lives and lost everything. And what did they do? They tried to laugh it off, said I was being dramatic, that kids these days are too sensitive. I said things that day I probably should have said years, maybe even decades ago. But here's the thing that still haunts me, the thing that still wakes me up some nights. I didn't call the police. I told myself it was to protect my kids. I didn't want CPS breathing down our necks, turning their trauma into sterile paperwork. But if I'm brutally honest, a part of me, a tiny, humiliating part, still clung to this ridiculous hope that my parents would feel enough shame to actually change. They didn't. Not an inch. So when that text came months later, uninviting me from a family dinner like I was nothing more than a mild inconvenience, it wasn't a shock. It was clarity. The dinner was a big deal, by the way. My aunt and uncle were back from Europe after 2 years. A huge welcome home celebration. The kind of event families use to pretend everything's just fine. I opened the family group chat. Photos of the fancy restaurant. Jokes about ordering too much wine. Memes about jet lag. And you know what? No one tagged me. No one asked where I was. I scrolled back and there it was. A message from my mother, sent days earlier. "Hey everyone, Misty decided not to come, so don't worry about saving her a seat. Let's make it a positive night." She didn't say I wasn't invited. She said I chose not to be there, like I'd just bowed out, like I was sulking, like I was the problem. And the most sickening part? No one questioned it. No one called. No one even bothered to text and check on me. I didn't respond. I didn't correct the lie. I just smiled, closed the chat, and then with a deep breath I left the group. And that right there was the moment something shifted inside me. Quietly. Permanently. You see, they had gotten so used to me cleaning up their messes that they'd forgotten just how much of their lives still ran through me. Their cell phone plans, bundled with mine from years back when I'd offered to help them save money. Their internet account, still under my old login. Their RV insurance discount, tied to my name. Even their streaming services, Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon, all on my credit cards because they couldn't figure out autopay. It took me 15 minutes to cancel everything. No warning. No explanation. And yeah, it felt good. But not good enough. Because I knew they still thought they had the upper hand. They thought the rest of the family was quietly applauding them, that they had successfully isolated me. They had absolutely no idea what was coming. Not from me. And certainly not from the people who were about to realize just how badly they'd been lied to. I shut my phone off and sat there in the quiet, listening to my kids laugh in the next room. And for the first time since that hospital room, I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready. The silence didn't last long, though. I had barely set my phone back on the kitchen counter when it started buzzing again. I just watched it light up from across the room, while my kids sat on the floor coloring, blissfully unaware of how close our world had come to completely collapsing. I didn't pick it up. The first call went to voicemail, then another, then another. When the calls finally stopped, the texts began. Is the internet down? I can't make any calls. Something's wrong with the phones. Misty, did you change something? I still didn't respond. I knew the rhythm by heart. First, confusion. Then irritation, then panic, and eventually, inevitably, they'd land exactly where they always did. Anger wrapped in blame, served with a steaming side of guilt. Within the hour, the messages were longer, sharper. Misty, this isn't funny. You're overreacting. We're still your parents. I muted the thread. I didn't need to read the rest. They'd convinced themselves I was being dramatic, that this was all about my attitude. That they were the real victims here. What they didn't understand was that I wasn't doing this to feel better. I wasn't looking for apologies. I was done absorbing consequences that were never meant for me. Instead of replying to them, I opened a different contact. My aunt, the one flying back from Europe. I typed slowly, carefully, making sure there was no venom in my words. Hey, I wrote, just wanted to let you know I won't be at the dinner on Saturday. I was invited. I hope your trip was amazing, though, and that the night goes well. I stared at the message for a moment before sending it. No accusations, no drama, just the plain, simple truth. An hour passed. Then my phone buzzed again. What do you mean you weren't invited? My uncle wrote. That was all it took. The dam broke. My cousin Aaron texted next. Are you serious? I asked if you were coming, and they said you had other plans. Then, my cousin Leah sent a voice message. I didn't even open it before another text came through. Misty, I feel sick. I reread the group chat. Your mom said you were skipping to avoid conflict. I can't believe they lied like that. Apparently, my parents had framed it as me still being emotional, unwilling to let go of the past, choosing to stay away because I couldn't handle being around family. I wasn't surprised, but it still made my blood boil a little. So I stopped protecting them. I told them everything. Not angrily. Not like I was begging for sympathy. I told it plainly, the way you tell a story when you're just too damn tired to sugarcoat it anymore. I told them about the work trip, about trusting my parents, about the neighbor's desperate call. I told them my son had been hospitalized with a fever, that my daughter, my brave, scared little girl, had gone days pretending she wasn't terrified so her brother wouldn't cry. And then I told them about the dog. The family dog my parents had sworn they loved like a child. The one they left in the yard without enough water. The one that died 2 days after I got home. I admitted something I'd never said out loud before. That I would never forgive myself for not reporting them. That, if anyone else ever told me a story like that, I wouldn't hesitate to call CPS. The replies came fast after that. No one, absolutely no one, defended them. Aaron said he didn't trust them anymore. If they could do that to your kids, he wrote, the grandchildren they bragged about, then my kids aren't safe either. Leah was furious. She said she felt used, like she'd helped cover for people she never would have supported if she'd known the truth. Then my uncle replied, if I had known any of this, I wouldn't have let them organize anything. This isn't over. I sat there staring at the screen, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from this overwhelming, almost unbelievable sense of relief. They thought they were isolating me. What they were really doing was drawing a line in the sand. And most of the family? They were standing squarely on my side. I sent one last message that night, this time to a smaller group chat, the relatives who had reached out directly. I'm not going to the dinner, I wrote. I'm not asking anyone to boycott or make a scene. I just think you deserve to know the truth before you raise a glass. I told them everything again, calmly, without theatrics. And I didn't ask for anything in return except one thing. If anyone asks why I'm not there, please don't lie for them. That was it. The dinner was 2 days away. I wasn't going. Saturday night, while the rest of the family gathered at some fancy restaurant without me, I stayed home with my children. We made popcorn. We watched old animated movies they'd already seen 100 times. For a few glorious hours, I didn't check my phone at all. Then, just after 9, it exploded. The first message was from Aaron. It's chaos. You wouldn't believe it if you were here. Then, from my sister. Short, brutal, and completely unexpected. You made the right choice staying away. I leaned back on the couch and just let the messages roll in. From what they told me later, the night started exactly how my parents wanted. They held court at the end of the long table, at a restaurant they loved to brag about. They laughed too loudly, dropped subtle comments about how hard family drama can be. They truly thought they still controlled the narrative. At first, everyone played along. Toasts were made. Travel stories were shared. But underneath it all, there was this thick tension, the kind you feel right before a storm breaks. People kept glancing at the empty chair where I should have been. Finally, it was my uncle who broke the silence. He stood up, wine glass in hand, and said, It's too bad Misty couldn't be here. But after everything that's happened, I can't blame her. My father laughed nervously, mumbled something about personal issues not ruining a celebration. My mother talked over him, saying some people just held grudges. No one listened to them. My uncle told them everything. The kids, the 4 days alone, the hospital, the dog. One by one, faces around that table changed. Shock, disgust, then raw anger. Someone asked if it was true, if they really left 2 kids under 10 alone. My mother started to cry. My father raised his voice. They blamed stress, miscommunication, sensitive kids. But this time, no one believed them. People started standing up. Forks were set down, untouched. Some didn't even finish their meals. By the end of the night, half the family had left early. The rest stayed only out of respect for my aunt and uncle, not for my parents. When it was over, my parents sat there alone at that long table, surrounded by cold plates and half-empty glasses. For the first time in their lives, no one rushed to comfort them. And I didn't have to lift a single finger. I didn't sleep much that night, but it wasn't because I was anxious. Oddly, I wasn't. It was because something inside me had finally gone still. The kind of stillness that comes after a long, exhausting noise stops all at once. No buzzing dread, no rehearsed arguments playing in my head. Just quiet. When morning came, my phone was already vibrating. Missed calls from my father, texts from my mother. Long, frantic paragraphs stacked on top of each other like collapsing dominoes. We're still your parents. You've embarrassed us. You've gone too far. I didn't open them. Instead, I made pancakes for my kids. Blueberry faces, sticky fingers, laughter filling the kitchen. For once, my phone stayed face down on the counter, powerless. By noon, my sister called. She didn't bother with small talk. Misty, she said, her voice quiet, whatever you're feeling right now, just know no one is on their side. She told me everything I hadn't seen. How my dad had tried to turn the conversation into an attack on my mental stability. How my mom cried loudly, dramatically, insisting she was being punished for one mistake. How they kept saying they didn't know leaving kids alone was that bad. As if common sense had suddenly become optional. No one bought it, even the relatives who used to defend them, no matter what. The ones who always said family is family were done. They crossed a line. Misty, my sister said, almost a whisper. And everyone finally sees it. After we hung up, she sent me screenshots. The family group chat had imploded overnight. My parents were backtracking hard. Apologies tangled with excuses. Pleas for understanding wrapped in passive-aggressive guilt. One by one, people left the chat. Aaron first, then my uncle, then Leah, then my cousin Hannah, who usually stayed out of everything. By noon, there were 3 names left. My mother, my father, and a distant cousin who probably hadn't even read the messages. It should have felt like victory, but what I felt instead was clarity. They still had one thread tying them to me. Money. Not in the obvious way. They weren't asking me for handouts, not yet. But so much of their life still leaned on my name, my credit, my signatures. So I finished it. I canceled the RV insurance entirely. Shut down the old home security system, billed through my account. Disconnected every remaining service I could find. When I was done, it felt surgical, precise, like removing something infected before it could spread again. The last thing I did was send an email. Short, formal, clean. Effective immediately, I am no longer responsible for any services, accounts, or financial obligations connected to you. Please do not contact me again. I CC'd them both. I CC'd the companies. I made it official. That night, my phone didn't ring. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was stunned, like the pause after an explosion, when no one knows what to say next. The first letter arrived 4 days later. Plain white envelope, no return address. My mother's handwriting, neat, deliberate, practiced. Inside were 3 pages about how much they missed me, how sad they were, how hard things had been since the misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. I didn't finish reading it. I tore it up and dropped it into the trash, like junk mail. 2 days later, another letter. This one shorter, sharper. My father's handwriting. Messy, impatient. You've made your point. Time to move on. As if I'd thrown a tantrum. As if years of cleaning up their messes could be erased with a single sentence. More letters came. Some apologetic without admitting fault. Some bitter, dripping with resentment. Some casually mentioning money, health issues, how expensive everything was these days. I tore them all up. If they thought words could pull me back in, they didn't understand how far I'd already gone. Weeks passed. Then, finally, the letter stopped. The house felt lighter. My kids slept better. I slept better. For the first time in years, my phone buzzing didn't make my stomach drop. I thought this was the end. I should have known better. Because with people like my parents, silence isn't surrender. It's just a pause before they change tactics. The knock came 2 months later. A slow, heavy knock on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The kids were in the backyard building a fort out of cardboard boxes and lawn chairs, their laughter floating through the open windows. I was in the kitchen, fixing a dripping faucet, enjoying how ordinary everything felt. Then the knock came again. I wiped my hands, already feeling that familiar, unwelcome pit form in my stomach. When I opened the door, I froze. It was my father. He looked smaller, thinner, older, in a way I wasn't prepared for. His shoulders slumped. His jacket hung loose on him like it belonged to someone else. For a long, agonizing moment, neither of us spoke. "I'm not here to argue," he finally said. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it much lately. I just leaned against the doorframe, unmoving. Then he said it. "Your mother left me." I blinked. "She packed up," he continued, staring at the porch instead of me. "Took what little money we had. Moved to Florida, staying with her sister. He laughed, but it was hollow, empty. I guess I wasn't worth the trouble after all. I felt nothing. No sympathy, no satisfaction. Just recognition. He wasn't here to apologize. He was here because he had no one left. I'm not asking for money, he said quickly, or for you to come back. I just thought you should know. What he really wanted was for me to fill the space she'd left, to become the caretaker of his failures. I took a slow, steady breath. I hope you get your life together, I said. Then I closed the door. No shouting, no tears, just the soft click of the lock. Through the peephole, I watched him stand there for a moment longer, like he couldn't believe it was really over. Then he turned and walked away, and I didn't cry. I went back to the kitchen, finished fixing the faucet, and stepped outside to help my kids build their fort higher, stronger, something that wouldn't let invaders back in. For a long time, after my father walked away from my porch, nothing happened. No calls, no letters, no surprise appearances. At first, I stayed tense, waiting for the next move. Another tactic, another attempt to claw his way back into my life. But days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, and the silence held. It wasn't the anxious silence I'd known before. It was clean. My kids settled into a rhythm that didn't involve fear. They stopped asking why Grandma and Grandpa never called. They stopped flinching when the phone rang. My daughter slept through the night again. My son stopped checking the front door every time a car slowed outside. And me? I slept like someone who had finally put something impossibly heavy down. Work got easier, not because my job changed, but because I wasn't carrying the emotional weight of people who only contacted me when they needed something. I fixed small things around the house, loose hinges, chipped paint, broken drawers I'd ignored for years. Each repair felt symbolic, like reclaiming pieces of myself I'd abandoned just to keep the peace. I thought the story was over. Then one afternoon, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Normally I wouldn't have answered, but something in me just said to pick it up. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. She said she was calling from a law firm in another state. She asked if I was Misty McBride. I almost hung up. It sounded like a scam. Then she said my father's name. He had died. A stroke. Alone in a motel outside Tulsa. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The lawyer explained that he'd been drifting for months. Cheap motels, borrowed couches, nowhere permanent. He hadn't left a will, no property, no savings. Just a box of personal effects, and an envelope with my name on it. I thanked her and hung up. I sat there at my kitchen table for a long time, staring at nothing. I wasn't crying. I wasn't relieved. I wasn't angry. I was blank. The box arrived a week later. It was smaller than I expected. A battered cardboard thing. Taped at the corners like it had been handled carelessly. Passed from one indifferent place to another. Inside were a few worn shirts, old receipts, a cracked wristwatch that no longer ticked, and the envelope. My name written across the front in my father's handwriting. I opened it slowly, bracing myself for manipulation, for excuses, for one last attempt to rewrite history. But that wasn't what it was. The letter was short, a page and a half. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't blame anyone else. He didn't pretend. He wrote that he knew he had failed me, that leaving my children alone had been wrong, that what he and my mother had done to me over the years was worse. No ifs, no buts, no misunderstandings, just facts. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't healing in the way movies promise, but it was the closest thing to honesty he'd ever given me. I held that letter for a long time. Then I burned it, not out of anger, out of closure, because it didn't need to follow me into the future. As for my mother, I never heard from her again. Last I knew, she was still in Florida, still telling her version of the story to anyone willing to listen. Maybe she painted herself as the victim. Maybe she blamed me. Maybe she rewrote everything. I didn't care. A year has passed now. We moved into a new house last month. Bigger yard, quiet street. The kind of place where the past feels far away, like another life entirely. My kids are happy. Truly, deeply happy. Sometimes late at night, I wonder how different things might have been if my parents had just apologized sooner, if they'd owned even a fraction of what they did. But then I remember something important. People don't change unless they want to, and they never wanted to change. They wanted control, and now they have none. I have my children. I have my peace. I have a life that doesn't require permission from anyone who ever hurt me. If you're reading this and wondering whether walking away makes you cruel, it doesn't. Sometimes leaving isn't revenge. Sometimes it's salvation.